Well, I'm the one who always reminds everybody that not everything gets eaten. And if we consider the whole food cycle, we have to think not only about the fun stuff of growing it and cooking it and sharing it, but what are we going to do with the leftovers? So Zero Waste Vancouver thinks about two kinds of garbage that exist on the planet. There's technical nutrients, which is all the throwaway products and packaging that we're going to give back to the producers. And then there's biological nutrients, which is the stuff left on your plate that we're going to send back to Mother Nature. And I've been involved this summer on behalf of Zero Waste Vancouver with several of our colleagues in two really good outreach programs that went on this summer, hosted by the City of Vancouver. First one to try and really push backyard composting into neighborhoods where it hasn't existed, and we were in Renfrew, Collingwood. And the second one was to treat two neighborhoods to the thrill of being the first two neighborhoods in Vancouver to have a food scraps composting collection service. So this is going to start up, and this is unfortunately happening just at the time when I'm about to disappear for 6 months. So Zero Waste Vancouver will be in Montreal for 6 months, but we're going to come back and hit the ground running. And when we do, the other thing that really turns my crank, besides waste, is neighborhoods. I've been a neighborhood passionate activist for 25 years on the West Side. So it is my thrill to introduce somebody in, you live over in the East Side now, don't you? She and I both live on the East Side, but care a lot about the West Side. And Zsuzsi is disclosing on the West Side very important things. There's food insecurity of the sort that is familiar in some neighborhoods, even happening over on the West Side. But there's tremendous potential for people getting together and solving the full range of food problems that exist in our society. And Zsuzsi is going to tell us all about it. Thank you, Zsuzsi.
I was going to get this going. It's not the beginning, but it's going to loop, and I'm sorry, Emmy, for totally embarrassing you. This is called a Prezi, for any of you unfamiliar with it. Okay, so hopefully that'll go on its own. There we go, that's better. So I've been participating in and researching neighborhood food networks in Vancouver for just over 2 years now. And as part of that work, I've come across the words of Patricia Allen, so please excuse my graduate student tendencies, but I'm going to share those with you. What she says is that solving justice problems in food and agriculture begins by recognizing that problems are created by people and thus resolvable by people. So before I get started talking about the Westside Food Security Collaborative this evening, I want to take the opportunity this evening, because it's a very special one, to firstly extend a very heartfelt thank you to everyone in this room who's engaged in solving these justice problems in food and agriculture, from the totally dynamo Trish Kelly, who's put in hundreds of volunteer hours, not only organizing tonight, but doing things like rushing to meetings on her lunch hour to support neighborhood food work across the city. To those of you who I don't yet know, but who, for whatever reason, were compelled to be here this evening, and to the rest of you who are already my collaborators and friends in this movement, thank you. So I got involved with the Westside Food Security Collaborative, which is who I'm representing here this evening, as a student working for a project in a class on building inclusive communities, which is fitting because that's the work that the Westside Food Security Collaborative and all the groups represented here this evening do every single day, is include people through food. Whether it's through a potluck, a community kitchen, or the project we were engaged in 2009, the Westside Pocket Markets. Now, the story of the pocket markets is important to understand, and pocket markets, for those of you who are totally forgivably unfamiliar with the lingo, are small produce markets. It's important to understand the story of why those happened on the West Side to know why the Westside Food Security Collaborative exists. So those markets began after a call was made by a 63-year-old woman who was living in the South Granville neighborhood to the South Granville Seniors Friendship Center. She was going hungry to her neighborhood and hadn't had anything to eat the day before she called Clemencia Gomez, who's the ED of the center. This spurred the collaborative into action, and under the leadership of an amazing community member, who many of you know, named Spring, the Westside Pocket Market started. And they were established right in the senior center, so it was a way to get affordable, fresh fruits and vegetables that were from the Lower Mainland and produced in an ecologically sensitive way to that community. As part of that project, my involvement, I interviewed several seniors who were living on the west side, all female, and all longtime residents of that neighborhood, calling it home for anywhere from 20 to 50 years. But over the last 5 to 7 years, these women have watched the face of their neighborhood change and are no longer able to meet their food needs along South Granville. Instead, they're going to Shoppers Drug Mart along South Granville. They're taking strenuous trips on the bus or walking to other neighborhoods to get their groceries. They're going to the South Granville Senior Center when they can, or they're simply going without. Now, seniors are only one of several vulnerable groups who we've identified on the West Side who are facing food insecurities and food injustices. So that really goes to prove the point that I want to make this evening, is that the West Side, even though it is on average the more affluent side of town, is not immune to all the sorts of vulnerabilities that other parts of the city experience. What that actually creates is the situation where the need is hidden and people are ashamed to admit that they need support like that one woman did. Now, my first meeting of the Westside Food Security Collaborative in 2009, I got to sit around a table with a group of people who were living, studying, volunteering, and working on the West Side. There were directors of social service providers, there were students doing projects, Grassroots Village Vancouver and the Food Policy Council was there. We had people from Vancouver Coastal Health, we had a professional chef, people who were growing food, and other people who were likewise engaged in their community food system. Everyone was there voluntarily, and everyone was there as an equal, no matter if they were an ED of a huge organization or they're just representing themselves. I found it incredibly welcoming and easy to join, to get involved and find a sense of community within, even though I've never actually lived on the West Side. So I'm very lucky, and it's very novel, that we have some short-term funding right now from the Vancouver Green City Grants Program for me to be able to coordinate the collaborative for just a few months. And there's a lot more we've identified we could do once we are able to secure a little bit more funding. We haven't been successful in doing that just yet. But because the group evolved without any resources, the culture of the collaborative has been not to run or own any of our own food projects or programming, but to be a way of incubating connections between people who are already doing that work. So our members are people like Sally, who for years has been a volunteer running a fruit and vegetable program, getting hundreds of pounds of fresh produce out into the neighborhood every year. Charlotte, who's here this evening, if she can give us a wave. Charlotte over there is an amazing volunteer who gardens with the Kids Mama Collaborative Garden and does about 1 million other things in her neighborhood. We also have a new member here this evening named Sarah Hickstone right here. Hi, Sarah. So Sarah just joined us, and she just started volunteering to be able to get a community kitchen going on the West Side. So it's people like those who represent our hope for solving food justice problems on the West Side and in the city at large. And the Westside Food Security Collaborative was where they can come to connect. So if you have a connection on the West Side, here comes my pitch, and you want to join the collaborative, learn about what we're currently working on, partner, or come to our meeting next week, we would love to talk to you after the presentation, so please come and see us, and thank you.